Welcome to Bonafide Dialogues.
In a world that's always racing forward, sometimes we need to slow down and reconnect.
Connect genuinely, broaden your perspective, and share your passion.
Bonafide Dialogues, where authenticity, creativity, and passion merge. Shannon is a global leader in intelligent automation, generative AI, and digital transformation. With over 20 years of experience driving innovation across the Department of Defense, Cisco, and Chevron. He's the creator of the ACT framework, alignment, clarity, and transparency, and a recognized thought leader featured by the Forbes Technology Council, Gartner Peer Community, and Insight Jam. Doug helps enterprises unlock autonomy, scale AI responsibly, and empower people in the future of work.
Let's start with the basics. For people that are not familiar with agentic AI, multi-agent systems, maybe you can give just a quick overview, not too complicated, so anyone who is watching could understand.
Sounds good. Thanks, Christina, for having me on. And overall, so with LLMs, like large language models that we have now, like OpenAI and Anthropic and Claude and Gemini and all these ones, they in the beginning they were trying to find their footing and saying like, here's what you do. And some of the large companies were saying, we're going to build our own large language models. And then that didn't quite always work out because these like the OpenAIs and the Geminis, they have become like foundational models. They have all of human knowledge built into them, and it's not just guess the next word kind of approach or fractional of that. It's gotten much more, but they needed a way to take action. And so when you have actions that need to happen, you need agency or things that are actionable. And so that's where agents kind of came out of that. And so with agents, you have the ability to say, I need to do a thing or handle a task or run. Now we're getting to the point where like agentic and whatnot, where we're saying, I have a goal, and that goal I need to go run tasks off of to get those tasks done so I can actually answer the goal that I had originally. So that's where you have agents and AI agents and agentic agents. But then when you have multi-agent systems, that's more on the enterprise side of how you run a business. And the business has a goal, and there's different KPIs of those goals. And those KPIs can be different agents that are just running those tasks to handle those things to get back the KPI, and you get all of the KPIs back, and then that actually answers the OKR of the business. And this is the direction where many companies are kind of leading into now because you have audit control, you have visibility of what's going on, you have different automations potentially in route or reports that you can run and teams that you can actually dial into or talk to. There's agents that are not like more than above, like chatbot agents that can talk to people, or you can ask questions to it, especially with like your RAG models, your generative augmented generative models, essentially that talk to your data. And essentially, though that's how data is now ingested and given back and forth, but there's a whole kind of technical side we could get into, but we probably won't. But that's the gist of understand that it's gone through a cycle, and as things like innovate, it gets very fast on the innovation side. That's why a lot of people aren't able to keep up. They're saying, well, what happens? Where does it go? And what do we do? But then as it innovates, it commoditizes, it becomes part of the norm. And that's where people also get lost because they go, well, what's new now wasn't new like 3 months ago, and now is here. And now we have videos that we don't know what's real. We have conversations and news channel stuff that we have no idea if that's a real person or a fake person. Is that plane actually do the thing? We have to question a lot of this. And so there's a lot of fear and misunderstanding happening at the same time. So that's where hopefully leaders like myself and others can help really drive the information and explain it all. But yeah, hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, just to simplify, I think, for our viewers. So we had just a regular automation, old school automation, and it seems like most companies still didn't figure out that part, right? Then,
There's a maintenance, yeah, maintenance side
yeah,
of that as
now we
well.
have AI, and in the last several months, we hear a lot about AI agent and agentic AI, and like you said, multi-agent systems.
Right.
So it seems like we're progressing very fast, but we have to,
Yeah.
it feels like we have to step back and you need to clean your house, understand what's going on in your company before you can jump to agentic AI, right? Many companies still work on their automation. They have all these legacy systems, and now you want to bring in this amazing technology and you think you're going to solve all your problems. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you definitely won't solve all your problems. There is, you have a good point on even Microsoft and all the big companies are saying, filter your data, categorize your data. What is your data? Like, how do you as a company utilize your data? Because that cultural aspect, that dynamic of that data is key. And your back office is usually way worse than your front office. Where you do business every day, that's filtered, that's standardized. I build a thing to do a thing, I provide a service to sell, I get information back. That's easy. Like that can be automated, and that's usually what's automated. And because of automation or traditional automation had a lot of maintenance issues and whatnot, but it was able to get reports out, do things, build APIs where there wasn't APIs, and kind of build that bridge between different enterprise systems or legacy systems. Now, agents and AI and Gen AI, where that's leading now is basically you can almost take like English as code. You type it out, I want to do a thing because of a thing, give me the thing back, and it'll say, do you want to do this? You're like, oh, wow, you basically wrote half of it for me. And that's where it's really enabling. And a lot of companies right now are really being pushed by the people because there's 800 million people weekly that use ChatGPT. And so that's insane. Like that's a huge number of people compared to those that use like OpenAI, not OpenAI, but compared to those who use like Copilot. There's like 20 million weekly that use Copilot. So there's a mass difference. The majority of people at companies are saying, I want to use one versus the other because they're already used to it. It's on their phone, they use it at home, their kids use it, what have you. And so that's where that's kind of moving towards is enabling that and really inside of enterprises what I say is if you want to enable your people you should be enabling them, empowering them, and emboldening them to use this in the company under
Just
company
think about how
structures,
to how
governance.
to do it safely, right? And
Right.
take into consideration not only security but privacy concerns.
Right, but if you don't bring it in internally and you don't control it inside your own company, what you have is you have the chance of like data being secretly put out there on the internet inside these large language models. And so if you're not going to do it, they're going to do it themselves. 800
Anyway,
million people are doing this, they're going to be doing it themselves. So it's a matter of own it, govern it, build that change control, build that maintenance side of it so that you know what's going on. But also inside of companies, what people tend to forget is you're going to want to see exactly what those people are saying, what those employees are saying, not to monitor them, not to like say, oh, they're doing bad things. No, to basically say like if you're asking for something, maybe there's a chance that the company can go fix that for you and go add that in or bring that in because if it's going to help you out to get more business done, it's going to end up making more money. And so there's a win behind it. So it kind of we need to change like the way that we look at this sometimes, and that's what I see a lot of in the enterprise side.
so this is something that you refer to just LLM models, and I think it's a very important subject to discuss and for companies to consider because it gives you a competitive advantage if your employees are using those advanced tools, but do it right. You need to have internal governance and, like you said,
Right.
security. Uh, Keep an eye on what's going on and how people use it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because if you don't do it right, if you're not governing it yourself, if you're not building the architecture and the infrastructure to set it up and to contain it and work with it, what you're doing is if you're just like, hey, let's go bring in any LLM
Yeah.
and then throw agents at it, maybe you're using Cursor or whatnot, which is a LLM based agent that directly reports back to that same LM. If you as a company are selling or doing a service or providing a product and you're doing all that and you're doing it inside of an LLM and it's taking that data and kind of ingesting that data and then it goes into that model, you've essentially what you've created is intellectual surrender and you've given all your data away. So the same
Yeah.
thing that happened to like Toys R Us, for example, where they were like, hey, Amazon, can you ship our toys for us? Can you build our every year for Christmas time? Can you build that magazine for us to show all the toys to the kids and whatnot? They go, yeah, we'll do all that. And then boom, you're out of business because someone else can do it better. and
Yeah.
they have all your methods, they have all your processes, they know how you do what you do. The special sauce that made you special, you just gave it away.
Yeah.
Don't enable and don't create intellectual surrender. And that's what I see companies doing every day. And it's kind of scary. So when they say a certain amount of companies are going to go away eventually, that's the first reason. So
We can talk a little bit about AI agents.
if you look at an LLM, like a large language model, like the biggest library that's ever been, so Library of Alexandria, like boom, there's your LLM. So that's where the data is. That's where all the data is. That's where everything that's ever been known, it's a lot. And so an agent is something like, say I walk into the library. I can go ask it questions, I can read stuff, I can get stuff, knowledge, but only until I check out the book as an agent can I take that book home and then say it's a recipe book. Then I can follow those recipes in that book in my home setting and build a recipe or build a meal out of it or whatnot off of what I have. But also agents have the ability to like multi-agent. So if I have that book and it's in my house and I'm saying I want to build a pizza, well, I don't have the sauce or the dough and the stuff. So I can actually orchestrate out taking like a multi-agent approach and say, hey, other agents, can you go get the sauce? Can you go get the other thing? Can you do the thing? Oh, and when do we get all of the information and the ingredients back, I'm going to dictate to another agent, go build it.
Yeah.
Preset the oven, do the thing, do all the stuff. So that's how agents take action and provide agency to things. And then eventually, like, you put the data back and what have you. But it's the agency of an agent that takes the actions. And that's the best way to really look at it is when you want to take an action, the LLM itself, its action is providing information, usually in a way that when you prompt it or you talk to it, it has a chain of thought. And so prompting is a little bit easier now. You can actually ask it like, hey, I want to do this, but I don't know exactly what I'm asking for. So give me some insight to that. And it'll kind of build that out for you. Say, hey, think about these things. Oh, cool. Well, I'll do that. And then you have the chain of custody side, which we're just finally starting to get to in like Perplexity and some of these other tools where it says, hey, I gave you this information, but here's where I got it from. This is like this website or that website. Great. Now I know where you got it. I can go to that site if I want to verify or to see maybe a different viewpoint, like whatever the author's viewpoint was that I might be missing from the actual LLM that has its own kind of nuanced viewpoint. So sometimes it's always good to check on what that looks like.
Yeah. No, that's a very good example. I think it's easy to understand. Another example could be a chatbot, right?
Right.
Not just communicating with you, but actually, for example, customer service can fix the issue for you.
So if you have a chat bot or an agent that you're chatting with that has the ability to pull and inference different information, there are actions that it has ability to do. A lot of times that's very carefully truncated and maneuvered because of the fact that like some agents can still be prompt injected. And so that's basically language as code going into it to try to manipulate what it's doing. And so you see a lot of, not just hacking, but bad actors and people trying to do this kind of thing. And so you have to be mindful. If you're building your own, be mindful to test your chat bots and your AI agents to make sure they can't be injected and prompt injected. Because if they can be prompt injected, what happens is if that code is going to change the way that your agent thinks or the way that it's been built out with the code to say like do these things and here's how I say that, then what happens is they can actually create a model drift. And so that drift can be they can turn your LLM that you normally use and the rule sets and the fine tuning and stuff and the grounding that it was already built on, they can basically say be negative and be angry and say bad things and it'll do it, right? So you have to be mindful of those things. That's the security side of it, but
Yeah.
most people that are just using this at the end user state aren't going to have to worry too much about that. That's all being handled on not just the large language model side of like the big companies that are driving these, but also the enterprise companies that are driving this architecture and the back end to ensure that both sides match.
Yeah, it seems like the future of those LLMs is customized models. Do you think so too?
The From what Sam Altman has recently talked about and provided in his blog post that I think only like 500,000 people have seen at this point, the the future is not just agents, not just LLMs, but it's going to be us or businesses purchasing different levels of intelligence,
Mm.
which becomes very interesting. So it's different levels of intelligence from, fine-tune medical to fine-tune, academic to literally just how much compute that it thinks about. And the levels of intelligence are getting vastly beyond human at this point.
I actually like this idea about specialized LLMs. I know Khan Academy, they're building their own specifically for kids for education. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, Khan Academy.
Or
Yep.
for example, for something in the medical field, I think it's extremely important to see what data is being used there
Yeah.
because it's a high risk environment. No, I think it's a good idea to have it more specialized, but again, depending on the purpose.
Yeah, I mean we have to be careful too because there's been stories of AI and Gen AI, especially from like sites like 11 Labs or Character.ai. These companies had different things come out that could be seen as dangerous, especially for kids. Now, those are still like LLM-ish. When you get more to the agent side of things, it's much more narrow and and handy. So especially for kids, I do see a future where not just companies, but I see like the independent school districts may not win out, but some of these charter schools or these private schools may actually come together and say, let's go build agents for kids. And so these agents will be on their computers, they will stay with them, do homework with them, watch what they do, understand the history of what they're doing, really build that out. And then what you get is those agents can talk to the teacher agent, right? That teacher's agent can know if that student's behind, if they're missing something, if they didn't catch a concept just right, and be able to help them. And I think probably Khan Academy is probably working on that
No, they're
too.
doing an amazing job, yeah, in that area. Do you know about any use cases that are actually like something exciting? There's a company that is using agentic AI and shows some impressive results. Have you heard about anything like that?
Yeah, usually a lot of people ask for use cases. I always kind of tend to tell them like you're asking the wrong questions because the way you have to look at Gen AI and the way that's worked in now and the fact that it's going to be much more than what we all realize is that it was like analog back in the day, back when like even like if you just watch cell phones, right? So cell phones and then cell phones get smaller and then they become more digital. And then now we have like digital cameras and different things, aspects of those, and those applications start to drive different things. And we use them for daily, basically our cell phones now are like mini computers. That same thing's going to happen from like analog digital to what our computers, the actual computers, and what our day-to-day work looks like. And
Mm.
so when you look at multi-agent systems, you have the ability of saying, if I could run all these apps all at once, and if I knew generally what my job was, and I can drive that forward, that's what we're seeing. So we're seeing right now multi-agent systems that are not only like able to say, here's the project we're working on, how much steel or how much systems do we need in that? Go make those purchases ahead of time because we know it's going to go through. We know how many sockets we need, how many electrical outlets we need. And so go make sure we go check to see if we have that in stock. If we don't, again, go make those purchases or at least get the bill of lading out so we can actually get it signed and get it verified by a human because a lot of things that are being driven are very human in the loop. So these agents are driving human in the loop at first and saying, hey, humans, provide the context or provide the sign off. And so the context is like, hey, this is our project. This is what we need. Here's what we need to build, blah, 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 blah. And then it's a matter of like getting it signed. And then as we build trust in that, and as we get more information around that with these agents and how we're building these new processes, it becomes more of a human on the loop where it just all works. And that's where we have really cool stuff that's going to happen. Even like, again, like to mention Sam Altman's blog post, like he was even saying, like, look, data centers will be able to build themselves in the future. Well, how and why is that? Well, if you're videotaping and you have cameras of like what the processes look like, what normal looks like, what a known good looks like, how much information and systems and things are built into that, you can get it done pretty well. And with 3D printing of buildings, like there's some cool stuff you can do,
Or
and that may
robots,
be
right?
the
Can use
future, right?
robots too.
Yeah, as you can use physical robots that are coming out to have that same ability, or stuff I've talked about where the Tesla bots, people don't realize like you can actually go into VR yourself and telepresence into the Tesla robot. So if I can go anywhere in the world, if I could be at my home in a chair or whatever, go into VR and then show up in France and go like, hey, look, there's the Empire, like there's the Eiffel Tower. I'm there, but I'm not, right? I'm physically not there, but the robot's there. Or the example of a use case there is in the future where I think everybody's going to be working, or at least like college students will come out of college, or high schoolers will go work for Tesla in some way, shape, or form in a warehouse, and they're actually all in VR. But I can say, hey,
Mm.
I need someone to watch my kids or to walk my dog, and then basically I can. You have a bot in your home that you have there purchased, and so you have an agreement with Tesla at that point and then you say, hey, somebody's going to dial in and take that job for you. And then a QR code shows up on the bot's face and you scan it and you go, oh, hey, John, you're here. Cool. I'll allow you into my robot. He comes in and says, hey, I'm John. I'm here to walk your dog. Like, great, go for it. And then there you go. Like that's the future of business. And like this is the things that are happening around us that people don't realize this is all coming.
Yeah, it seems like agentic AI is like a brain for a robot.
Agentic AI, well, Gen AI, and really the more onto the brain of the robots is really where we get more of like the if we're not using humans, then it's more AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. That is something that is very much off to the races, and many companies are trying to hit that point. So, but the hope is that before
I'm
that,
far from that, yeah.
yeah,
You
the
never
hope is
know.
yeah, before that, the hope is like we get humans talking to humans with the robot being the in-between layer. And so you know you're still working with a human, but there's a human running the robot. That will help build trust over time. And then that's kind of where we need to go first.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of benefits, but what are the risks?
Yeah,
We can start
there's
with
a lot of
humans losing jobs.
yeah, I mean that's going to happen. I still say businesses shouldn't look to do that. Let's fire 10,000 people. Let's get rid of 30% or 10% of the workload or the people and whatnot. I say it's not fire. It's just don't hire. So instantly, if a company wants to be successful and save the ROI, if that's their main goal, great. Okay,
Increase productivity, right?
yeah, don't fire anybody. Just stop hiring. And if somebody says in your teams or your organization says, "Wait, we need to hire 10 people." Okay, go through your automation, your Gen AI team. Can we automate it any way, shape, or form first? If we can, well, we don't need to hire anybody. If we can't, great, we'll hire a few and have them train and work with those teams to really drive that forward and automate it, either with Gen AI or automation. So there's that aspect, but that's instant wins. You're not training people, you're not spending the time to hire the wrong person, uh, all those aspects.
Yeah, they also say, and there is a risk that AI will replace this first 3 year, workers who are just learning. And then you won't
Yeah.
have those experience, like for example, engineers or in any industry. So that's a risk. If you're not taking those young workers, young people to learn,
Training them
then
up.
you're not going to have experienced engineers, for example. So that's
Yeah.
the issue because they're trying to flip it and use AI for those simple jobs, but that's not the best way to go.
Yeah, the risk there, the way I describe it is like there's no ladder system for when people get out of college. And actually, there was a report out recently that talked about 4.8% of college graduates are jobless. Like, and that's the highest number of percentage in the last 45 years of looking at this in the United States. So like there is an issue. It doesn't mean it's all AI related. It means that there's a causation correlation. There's something going on with that. Maybe it's culture, maybe it's like the system, maybe it's the country itself. But there's something there. And so when you look at that and then you realize to your same point that there is not really a ladder system. There's not really like where do you go after college? Where do you go to like if from high school do you just go into college because there's no high school jobs. It'll all be automated or robots running it or
Yeah.
you just use an app to order your food and it just shows up at your door because all of those things are going to become cheaper. Like if you have a self-driving car, like it's in Austin, Texas right now. They have all, Tesla has self-driving cars. They're actually delivering themselves to people's doors. They just did it. I just got an email on it like, hey, look, we did our first delivery. Somebody bought a car online and it showed up at their garage. And you're
Shift
like,
itself,
whoa,
yeah.
what? Like this is the future we're looking at.
Yeah.
And nobody can really know exactly what that's going to look like. Even I don't know that, right? But like we can look at trends and we can look at history and say, what have we done before? What do humans want? And what can we gain out of it? But when we look at, to your point of like, what are the kids going to do? How do we learn? And we're going to need systems of record. We're going to need mentors and mentees to really help drive that gap. And that gap is going to be seen not only in college students, it's going to be seen in the job market right now, where you apply to 1,000 jobs and you might get called back to one or two, but who knows, right? Like it's a weird world we're moving into at this point.
And we need to have more trade schools. We need more electricians,
Trade schools need to come
plumbers,
back.
and factory workers if we're bringing back factories, you know.
Yeah, and those have been cut out a lot. And they used to have trade schools or even, shop class and all those things back and even when I was younger, but they're kind of gone now. But if they come back, it would be good. But the trade schools would be like how to build a robot, how to build a
Yeah, how to
self-driving
fix
car.
robot, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I think there is some wins there, and at least it gives people some insight. But those industries are still so new, it's hard to leverage them at this point. Or maybe we just have a bunch of people work for Khan Academy.
Yeah, there's so much we can do, with these new opportunities, definitely, in every field.
Every field is actually touched by AI, and that's what people don't realize yet. And there's a lot of people that are still avoiding it at this point. I've talked to many just in passing, and people are like, "Oh, I've never used AI." I'm like, "If you're not using it, it's going to use you." So,
Yeah,
the
that's what I'm hearing
algorithms,
from you. The main point I see that when I ask you about the use cases, your answer was like it's going to be everywhere. It's going to integrate in every industry, in every aspect of our lives. I think this is what I'm
yeah.
hearing from you.
I mean, those of us in the IT business world, like originally there were, something like 10 years ago, there was like DevOps and then there was like IoT devices. And IoT is the information of things or the Internet of Things. And it was back then it was like, oh, your toaster will be able to know stuff and you'll talk to your refrigerator. And if your pantry doesn't have bread, it'll tell you to go buy bread. That never really worked because there's too many different systems disparated. But now with AI, they are talking because it doesn't matter what system, it can actually talk to one another. Just like with languages, I'll use AI to when I travel to different places to talk around the world, and I'm like, oh hey, I need to say this thing, I need to do this, and it'll say it, or I'll be listening to somebody and I'm like, understand this language and then report it back to me in English. And I'm like, oh, I know exactly what you said. And I can then actually interact with that person. It's the same thing's happening with systems. And so the things and the barriers that used to be there, be it language, culture, and systems and coding language as well, are no longer really there anymore. And that's what's changing and implementing on everything.
You were focusing on automation, and now with AI, it seems like the whole new world opens up for you for what you do in your career.
Yeah, and I think it goes hand in hand, and many people also don't realize that. Like when you look at Gen AI, and I started looking at it because it literally came out on my birthday in 2022 of ChatGPT 3, which I mean, it technically didn't come out on my birthday because like the first sign of like large language models was attention is all you need from a Google, Advantix like document. But when everybody started paying attention to it at the same time I did, I was like, oh, it's my birthday. I was like, what is this thing? I was like, I need to pay attention to this. But at the same time, like that, Gen AI definitely is part of automation. And I think at the end of the day, again, it's like use the right tool for the right thing. Don't just go looking to Gen AI to solve all the issues. It's not going to solve all your issues. There's still massive things that are needed on the back end side. Enterprises need to realize they need to start filtering their data now. They need to start understanding the what, where, and why of their data now and categorizing that data, or they're never going to be able to get to that point. But you also have the issue of even those that affects us on the personal level, these systems of Gen AI. aren't hierarchical in nature, they're decentralized in nature. And so when you have systems that can talk to different dis disinformation things or decentralized things, what does that look like in the future? And so that's what's exciting is seeing like we are in this interesting cusp of the fantastic world that we're about to move into and is trying to take that water hose approach or fire hose approach of information and see like where doesn't this impact and kind of like who's safe at the end because everybody's like, oh well the workers and the construction workers will be fine until the robots come. Oh,
Exactly.
the poets and the artists would be great. Technically, that's being done pretty well. It doesn't mean that it can take thought from nothing because I mean, Stable Diffusion is very interesting. It's one of the protocols for like building images. And when you take Stable Diffusion and you look at a technical side, it's essentially taking a human, looking at a cloud and going, that looks like a cat. And Stable Diffusion is kind of the same thing. You take some general pictures and an idea of what you type out, and it like pulls it away and goes like, that looks like a cat. And you're like, how'd you do that? So the the veil of this whole thing is definitely as it goes getting much easier. Like I started talking about where like videos are you don't know much, you don't even know if
Yeah,
us
deepfakes.
talking are very human. There's different aspects you can look like. I use my hands a lot and make different facial features. The fact that you can probably see my head in the back of the thing
Maybe
here.
you send your avatar
Yeah,
to participate in my podcast.
right. Yeah, I'll send that guy. But people are doing
While you're
that.
doing something else.
Or there's like Notebook LM, right? Notebook LM is a website. Google made this, and I even use it, and it's a podcast
Yeah,
large like language model where you can basically put all the notes you want in there, and it'll act like a podcast. There's two people talking. It's all
yeah,
AI. But
yeah, it's impressive.
yeah, I use it
I
to like
tested it too.
yeah. I have very long newsletters I put out, and instead of somebody reading it for 30 minutes or something, I just do like a quick like 14-minute podcast that takes all the information I have in there and it talks to it, and some people like that.
Yeah, it's nice. But I still feel like everything human will have value.
It should. I think that even furniture that's made by human hand is going to go exponentially up in price because as things are created, and I think the things for your podcast here and for people to understand is that the world before AI, before Gen AI really, but in general, was very human created. We have very human things that we see in the world. You look at cars, and even as a kid, you look at a car like the bumpers and stuff. You're like, oh, it's a face. That one's a nice car. That one's a mean car. That one's a fast car. It's because it has. You're looking for faces. As humans, we do this. But in the world of AI, when AI starts making the world around us? Does it look like us? Does it feel human? And I think we're going to find that it may not. And especially when you look at the world of AI that NVIDIA is creating, where it's, a million times over tested, simulated, that is very AI. And then you look at the world that Tesla's creating, and you say with the bots and everything, but very still human involvement and recording of the human world around it. These are two different AIs, and that's where I think
Exactly.
people don't realize that.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. And it's our choice. How do we want it to look? How do we want it to feel?
Right.
And
And
how
I
do we
think
keep
we're not going to like it.
hum yeah, how do we keep human in the loop?
Yeah.
How do we make it kind to humans?
Yeah, luckily the thought process is like, some people are like, oh, it's going to be Terminators and scary. I don't see that. I see definitely, we need to make sure that we advocate for ourselves and we advocate for our consent to our data, to our face, to our voice, to who we are. Those are the things that we need to be kind of like saying like, hey, like don't do that. We are individuals on purpose. Like we should own our rights to ourselves. That those shouldn't be recreated and done in a way where like it's one thing if you're a celebrity, like if you're like a celebrity in movies, like you should also have some of that because that is your job. But if you're like a public figure, even to the extent that I kind of am in some regards, but like the hope is that you still have some control over that.
Yeah.
Kind of like in the media, like you don't people talking like bad about you or making you do things that you normally wouldn't do. And this is where, again, like to the people watching this, is that how does the average person, how do you combat this, right? And I think the only way right now to combat any of that happening to you is that you actually create your social media profile. You put out there your professional stance on things, what you believe, how you behave, what that looks like, because that's your authenticity, that's your integrity, that's how you show up, and that's how you show, hey, this is who I am. If you can do that, then when something says an alternative view or shows you in a video doing something that you obviously didn't do, you say, no, that's not me. This is me. And
It's
that's
against
the way.
my beliefs and my character.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's a very
Because
good
if
advice.
not, if you're just gonna not be out there and do anything, like how do you know? Like I don't know. Half the time you take your passport photo, like we all look like axe murderers on our passport photos. So like who knows what it is?
Yeah. I hope we will build kind robots. I've been thinking about how many people in the world and here in the US are not having children now, and then they get older, and who will be taking care of them? Probably robots, hopefully kind robots will help with that. What do you think
Yeah, I mean
about
there
this
are people
idea?
building that.
Just have all these interesting ideas.
Yeah, even Sony
Our future
about a
will
year
look.
ago, they put a patent out for a elderly care robot where basically it's like a giant chair with arms and a head, and it would like
Oh,
help the people out of bed, sit them inside this robot, and then roll them around and help them, and it basically had hands for them, and it would talk to them and take them about, and it was really neat concept. And so I see some of that happening too, and we'll see because there is an interesting thing in the world right now where
there's a problem.
the
Yes, we have a
kids.
big problem coming up. Yes,
Yeah, and
and
we're seeing that in
the way
Japan
country,
first. Yeah,
yeah, the
Japan
way
has.
we see countries, I think the countries that take care of their weakest population, which is children and elderly
Elderly.
people, this is who we are, you know? And usually children take care of their elderly parents, but there's so many people that don't even have children nowadays. I
Right.
think that is such a huge area that needs some attention, and technology can help with some of it. It's not the answer, but it can help.
It can. There's a lot of companies right now also looking at utilizing agents to help the elderly kind of stay in the workspace longer. So if they want to stay working, great. Well, how do we help them serve that job, handle that
Oh,
business
I love
function
that.
and push
I
it
didn't
forward? Yeah.
know. I didn't know about this. This is great.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It seems like you're very excited about AI and all of this, but what do you like to do outside of work? I see you have
Hang out with
Star
my
Wars
kids and
behind you.
build Legos, hang out with the kids. So I don't post anything usually on the weekends. Usually like Monday through Friday, I have something to post on the different research I'm doing on LinkedIn and whatnot. So that's probably the best place to find me. But on weekends, I don't do any of that. I take the kids to the beaches or something, and we get out, we do stuff because you have to recharge. Again, like it's a very human aspect of a thing. Take a break, give yourself a chance, like go be human. In the many different council groups I'm in and the many different thought experiments I've done with some of these groups is, you know, if everything's all done with AI, like it does everything, right? Well, then what do you want to do as a human? Well, the answer usually comes back to be we want to do more human stuff. And that's like we want to go be healthier. We want to do more to be live longer. We want to do more with our families and have better connection and eat better food that maybe we make with ourselves because we have time to learn how to do it versus just like grabbing whatever's easy. All these things, right? So that's the way. Learn something new. Read something and take a different mindset that maybe you didn't have before. So those are the common things that I see, and so that's kind of that. So that and just thinking and helping people, trying to educate, trying to give back, and really like drive it forward and say like, how do we do this together? Because it's a very human dilemma and a human experience that we have to kind of resolve.
I usually ask my podcast guests about kindness, and we talked a little bit about kindness today. What does kindness mean to you?
Yeah, so my stance on that is I've always thought to be clear is to be kind. And so if I can be clear on my asks, my demands or pain points or things that I'm looking at or just my frameworks or attitudes of the way I think, if I'm clear. And, that provides me the ability to be kind, because I'm not, as human, especially working in like enterprise companies and like very large ones from like 80,000 something people to even smaller companies like 5,000 people, there is a massive difference in how you work with those. Yeah. And so the aspect there is like how do I do that? And so I show up with authenticity. I have, high integrity that I want to always show, like, hey, the same Doug you see here is the same Doug you see offline, and goofy Lego stuff and whatever. And that's also why the background, I like the background, because like this is me. Like it's not a bed, it's not workout equipment. You don't see a fan, goofing around. It's not like the fake backgrounds where it's like if I move too far from the camera, something weird happens. These are the different events I get to go to and get called into, or like the Bitcoin conferences and stuff where they're like, hey, we need your brain out here to go like figure out how does AI involve in this, or different things around the globe. So that's what's exciting, is being able to be a part of that and being part of that change, because even having kids that I build this stuff with, or seeing movies and whatnot, then it's the aspect of like, how do I drive that forward with future generations as well? And that's something we all need to be doing now, because it's a fast moving target.
Yeah, we can't even imagine the world our children will live in.
We can't, actually. So.
Yeah. And where people can find you, and what services do you provide?
Yeah, so people can find me on LinkedIn, and I also have a podcast show I do on YouTube. I actually just recorded it before this podcast, so definitely find me there. The podcast is Inside AI. It's from Inside Jam and whatnot. And then on LinkedIn, you can find me as Doug Shannon. You can even Google Doug Shannon at this point and find different videos and things I've been on. The services and whatnot, I have a day job like everybody else. I work for enterprise companies, and in one company in particular, but then definitely always looking to meet other companies to see what's going on, or if anybody is looking to,
or like a consulting services, right?
Yeah, so outside of work hours, if somebody has questions or whatnot, I'll usually answer questions, or say like, hey, I'll come speak to your C-suite and give them an idea of what's going on in the world and what that looks like.
Interesting. No, that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.